So on Sunday, this press statement came out, isn't it? 12th September it was, and it's as follows. It was a police arrest of Owusu Bempah. It says the head pastor of the Glorious Word Power Ministries, Reverend Owusu Bempah, and 3 others have been arrested. The other 3 suspects are Michael Boateng, Frederick Hene, and Nathaniel Ajekum. The 2 other suspects are on the run, and the police are pursuing them. The suspects are being detained for further investigations over the creation and circulation of multiple videos containing threats, the brandishing of a weapon, and the assault of some police personnel. After critically analyzing the said videos and based on intelligence gathered, the police embarked on an operation today, Sunday, 12 September, at the premises of the church to arrest the suspects. During the operation, some members of the church, believed to have been under the direction of Reverend Bempah, assaulted some police officers. The injured personnel have received medical treatment and are responding to treatment. The suspects are currently in custody and will appear before the court tomorrow, Monday, 13th September. The police strongly cautions the public against any acts that will disturb the peace of the country. We, the police, wish to give the assurance that impartial investigations shall continue in this matter and the public will be duly updated. And it was signed by Kwesi Fori, the ACP Kwesi Fori, who is the acting director of police communication. And then on the court's day on Monday, journalists were prevented from filming, capturing photographs of the accused person, including our beloved Reverend Owusu Bempah. And the police, again, professionally, and people have applauded the police for it, issued a statement apologizing to the Ghana Journalists Association in this regard. It says as follows. It has come to the attention, it says, it has come to the attention of the police administration that yesterday, Monday, September 13th, some journalists were prevented from entering the courtroom during the arraignment of the head pastor of the Glorious Word Power Ministries International, Reverend Isaac Owusu Bempah, and 3 others. It has also been reported that some journalists were attacked and prevented from working at the court's premises by some persons believed to be church members and supporters of the above accused persons. A team is currently studying the footage of the alleged assault of some of the journalists to identify the alleged perpetrators for immediate prosecution. We, the Ghana Police Service, apologizes unreservedly for this inconvenience and wish to give the assurance that journalists will be fully protected and allowed to do their work at all times, including the subsequent coverage of this case. We, the Ghana Police, will continue to do everything possible to deepen the cordial police-media relations. That's also signed by ACP Kwesi Fori, who is the Acting Director General of the Police Public Affairs. Now, let's get into the meat of the Owusu Bempah stuff. They'll put it up. We're going to show you the charges and everything. Okay, so it's here. The case will be entitled The Republic versus Owusu Bempah. And the facts are as follows. Patricia Odro-Kwatin, also known as Nana Agrada. Now, she's the one in the center of this story. Nana Agrada is the one in the center of this story. She's also a socialite. She's big on Instagram. I've seen a lot of her videos. You know, some are interesting, some are controversial, but she's in the center of this story. And her name is Patricia Odro-Kwatin, also known as Nana Agrada. In several Facebook posts and Facebook live sessions, insulted Prophet Owusu Bempah, upon which he retaliated by appearing at her house on the 10th of September and brandishing weapons, threatening to cause harm to her. He was thus arrested and charged with the following: offensive conduct conducive to breach of the peace. That's the first charge against Owusu Bempah. Offensive conduct conducive to breach of the peace. And then the threats of death. These are the charges against her. It is here that I invite Kweku Japan to join me so that we can go through this in some particular detail. Kweku, so take your stand over there. Good evening and welcome. How have you been?
You. I've been good.
You look resplendent in your suit.
I'm learning from you.
Okay, so the offenses are he was charged with offensive conduct conducive to breach of the peace and the threat of death. So let's go through it now. So the offensive conduct is in section 207 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Offensive conduct conducive to the breach of the peace. It says as follows: any person who in any public place or at any public meeting uses threatening, abusive or insulting words or behavior with intent to provoke a breach of the peace, or whereby a breach of the peace is likely to be occasioned, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So Any person in a public place using threatening. So you go to political party meetings or you're in a trotro and then fight ensues between somebody and you tell him that I'll kill you, I'll slap you, and you pull something from your, you brandish something from your pocket and you do your showmanship and all of that. If you do that, you are running counter to Section 207 of the Criminal Offences Act. So could you now tell us in detail, what is this law about?
Okay, so it's basically meant to protect the sanity in public life. And in order to found or in order to make sure that somebody is guilty, there are certain elements that must be satisfied. The first is that there has to be a representation which is threatening or abusing or insulting. The representation must be made in a public space or public area. So that's what makes the distinguishing factor. And then it's...
So if I do it in my house,
yes,
it's okay?
Well, it depends. Your house can be public depending on certain factors. The number of people that are present, how others can hear. For instance, assuming somebody is in your house and you are about to hack the person with a cutlass and the person cries out and there is a commotion in the area because your neighbors can hear and they come in, that may be, in that instance, specific instance, public.
If I'm playing Spa with my brother, and I play Kule, yet Essie, and he plays Kalo, and I say you're cheating me, I say, look, I'll slap you, man. What was that?
That would then be threat of harm, not a breach of the peace, because you and your brother, you are in your house. There is no reasonable possibility of it affirming society, of it distracting societal order and peace and stability. So that may be threat of harm, contrary to Section 75 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, but not a breach of the peace under Section 207. So that's the distinguishing factor.
Okay, so this one, they are alleging that Reverend Owusu Bempah went to the lady's house and brandished a gun or some weapon, something like that. So that's why they are charging him for this.
Yes. If you look at the video, he did not necessarily enter the building per se, but he was outside in a vehicle and was issuing certain threats, and there were certain representation. People were, some of his folk were having guns and machetes and things of the sort. So it was outside the gates, even though it was at her house. So in this instance, you could say that by virtue of the possible effects of it, what it could cause, it was in that instance public, and that is why the police have charged them. But it's left for the court to determine whether or not. And the interesting thing is that you have to make it with the intent to provoke or breach the peace. It is possible that somebody may argue that, indeed, I made insulting words, indeed, I pulled out a gun, but I did not do it with the intent to breach the peace. Now, in law, in order for an individual to be found guilty of an offense, two things must be present: the actus reus, which is the physical act, and the mens rea, which is the mental element. So the mens rea can be negligence, recklessness, knowledge. It can also be intent. In this instance, it is the intent to provoke or breach a peace. However, intent is also generally governed by Section 11 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, right? And in Section 11, subsection 1, it is provided that once you do an action, you cause the effects of that action out of reasonable possibility.
So that's to say, once you do the action, the intent is assumed upon you.
Exactly. Okay. If the cause or the effect of that action can reasonably be connected to that action. So in the case of Republic versus Odupong, for instance, a man struggled with his wife and the gun was loaded and accidentally shot his wife twice.
Accidentally?
Well, he claims accidentally, but he shot his wife twice. That's what he claims, so it's left with evidence. He was found guilty though, but maybe he wasn't able to prove that it was accidental. But the court was of the view that if you shoot somebody, what is the reasonable effect of shooting somebody? Is that the person will die. So in this instance, if you make a representation that is so grave, if you pull out a gun or you pull out a cutlass, something that is so provocative, you would be held to have intended to cause a breach of the peace if indeed there was a breach of the peace.
I see. So if you brandish a gun on the street in a neighborhood,
yes.
You can't come and say, I did not intend to breach it, because the action itself connotes a certain clear intention.
Exactly.
Okay,
so if you go to a polling station and you pull out a gun, you can't say that, I pulled out the gun, but I did not have the intent to use the gun. So long as you pulled out the gun, any cause, the commotion that was caused, to be imputed on you by virtue of Section 11(1). You can only exculpate yourself from liability if you're able to show that maybe it was by virtue of an act of automatism, Automatism as a defense is not in the criminal and
What
other
is
offense.
automatism?
Automatism is that you are not in control of your motor functions. So for instance, you can see I'm moving my hands. My head is my brain is controlling my hands. But there are instances where individuals may do certain things, but the brain does not control it. For instance, epilepsy.
Okay.
When you are in a fit.
So medicine must make that determination.
Yes, so you have to prove. And the case in point is Republic versus Dogo Dagati, where he was an epileptic fit and accidentally strangled some of the courts of the view that, well...
Strangled somebody to death?
Yes.
The person died?
Yes.
And he was epilepsy?
Yes.
What's the title of the case
when
again?
you are Dogo Republic versus Dogo Dagati, you see, when you are in... I'm not epileptic, but the claim was that in that state, you cannot see, feel, or feel anything. You can't control what you do. So often, I remember when I was even young, my mother taught me that when somebody is in an epileptic fit, move away from the person. Because anything can happen. There was another case, Bratty, for instance, that was in Northern Ireland, where the man actually loved his son. But, in a fit, he took a break and accidentally hit his son's head and his son died.
Died?
So, yes, died. So there are instances where you would have to prove that maybe it was not, it was by virtue of automatism, maybe you were insane, whether it's by...
But these are limited
delusions.
ways. Okay, so coming back to this matter, this is the meaning of the offense.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go also to the threat of death then.
Yes.
It says, whoever threatens any other person with death, with intent to put that person in fear of death, is guilty of a second-degree felony. Let's analyze the section 75 of the criminal offenses.
Yes. So in this instance, you must...
So Owusu Bempah has been charged with this as well.
Threat of yes.
Threat of death. What did he say? What did he do that could have brought this charge on?
Well, if I'll translate, I'll show you things like I would... So
he spoke in tree?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll show you and statements like that. But it was not just about saying I will show you, but you are telling somebody I'll show you and a gun is out or a cutlass is out. So in such instance, it can be distinguished from threats of harm. So Osei's J, in a certain case which has escaped me, noted that there is a distinguishing factor between threats of death and threats of harm. And in threats of harm, the intent is that you should put your victim in fear of death.
That's threat of harm.
That's threat of death.
Threat of death.
Yes, threat of harm is that, assuming I say I'll slap you, if you know reasonably that a slap will just cause pain, that is threat of harm.
So that cannot be threat of death.
No.
Because a slap ordinarily will not kill.
Cause, yes.
Okay. But if I take a gun
yes.
and I say I will show you, that could be called threat of death.
Exactly. Because if I would show you, I can easily pull the trigger and then you would kick the buckets. And it's interesting to note that just a threat is a second-degree felony. So there are categories of crime. Section 296 of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act provides for the categories. However, there are more. The constitutional one.
Okay, let's see what more we have. So these are the general rules for punishment. Section 296 is what you were talking about.
Yes.
Okay, that where a crime, not being a crime mentioned in subsection 5, is declared by any enactment to be a second-degree felony, and the punishment for the crime is not specified, a person convicted thereof shall be liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. Not exceeding, so maximum 10 years. It doesn't give us a minimum.
No, not yet.
And this is for the threat of death.
Second-degree
So
felony.
if you are charged for threat of death and you are found guilty, you could be heading for 10 years.
Yes, just for issuing a threat.
What are some of the defenses that will avail to a person who is being charged with a threat of death?
This is quite difficult because somebody may cite provocation, but in our law, provocation is not available to offenses generally. Provocation is only available to reduce murder to manslaughter.
Okay.
And the IB specific, so that's section 53, section 52.
So provocation can be used as a defense in the case of a charge of murder and you can bring it to manslaughter.
Yes, only. But
no other offense.
Yes, so
threat of death, threat of harm.
No. So Professor Mensah, for instance, after the Ayawaso shooting, she recommended that provocation should be included. The defense of provocation should be opened up, taking into consideration the fact that in Ghana, certain cultures or certain groups of people attach certain sentimental values to certain things. So we hold certain things like religion or culture so dear that when the religion is attacked, or culture is attacked, it should be taken as provocation.
Oh, I can understand why she was doing that in Ayaso West Wuogon, because the guy, the operative, had claimed that he had been tribally abused.
Yes.
The one who conducted the attack on Sam George.
Yes. And
claimed that he had been tribally abused.
Exactly.
But
So,
provocation will not avail to him
no,
as a defense.
No.
In the current circumstances of the criminal law.
So Professor Mensah also suggested, but that would mean we'll have to amend the criminal and other offences.
That's a parliament matter.
That's a parliament matter.
Okay,
That's
I see. This is interesting. So this threat of death could go for 10 years.
Yes.
And then what about this one, the 207 years?
That's a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor maximum 3 years.
Maximum for misdemeanor is 3 years.
Yes. So that's by virtue of Section 296 of Act 30. The maximum is
okay, the narrative mentions Nana Agrada, but she has not been charged. Is that correct? Factually, she has not been charged. Okay, but we don't know where the case is going. Okay.
Yes, but for her, if you look at certain things, the Facebook Live, the Facebook posts, and certain comments she made, the action of Prophet Owusu Bempah against her maybe would have been in the sort of defamation, that she was defaming him and things of the sort. But for criminal matters in such instance, right now it is Prophet Owusu Bempah who is a bit...
That's trouble. So those of us who like Owusu Bempah, what should we do? Should we go and beg? Should we go to the judge and say we beg? What should we do? Those of us who love him, what should we do?
Well, just pray.
We should pray.
Unfortunately or unfortunately, he was also caught on camera, so it would be quite difficult.
Yeah, I see.
Maybe he could argue that the persons who were wielding the knife and the gun they did not do it under his influence or under his control.
Oh, he in particular was not carrying anything.
Personally, no.
Personally, he wasn't.
The video didn't show
in the
that.
video, it didn't show that, so we don't know what else the police have.
Exactly. So he may argue that they were doing whatever he went there with them, maybe to have a chit chat with the Nagra.
But that means those people will be culpable.
Yes.
But they are pastors too. They are his pastors. This is going to be a big deal. We have to beg. Okay. The people were sending texts, as I told you in the afternoon, about it's a bailable offense. Why was he? Under what conditions could the bail be refused?
Okay. So first, Act 30 formally made a distinction between bailable and non-bailable offenses. Bailable offenses, as the name goes, are offenses that anybody can be granted bail for, and non-bailable offenses were offenses that nobody could be granted bail for. Now, by virtue of the case of Martin Pebo versus the Attorney General, the Supreme Court held that the distinction ran counter to Article 14, Clause 2 and 3 and 4 of the Constitution.
Which distinction runs counter?
The distinction between bailable and non-bailable.
Okay, so at some point, the law was amended for drug offenses to be non-bailable.
Yes, okay. Narcotics
generally to be non-bailable. Yes,
non-bailable. But now, because of the court's decision in Martin Pebo and Attorney General, all offenses are bailable. However, the fact that the offense is bailable does not mean the court is compelled to give bail. That's the distinction. So so it's bailable, but the court can refuse it. Exactly. In what circumstances, in a matter of 207 or threat of death, in what circumstances could the court refuse the bail? So if there is reasonable evidence that the person may abscond, that's run away from justice, if there are possible instances, it's proven that he being set free would be inimical to the process of investigation and prosecution. If he being set free would be a harm to the public and other persons, particularly the victim. So it ought to be noted that in the instance when you are refused bail, you can stay in for a reasonable time. You have to stay in police custody for a reasonable time, but there is no standard. So in the case of Dogbe versus the Republic, a reasonable time was, Taylor J described a reasonable time to be 9 months. 9 months was held to be a reasonable time. It may be less. A reasonable time to keep the accused person in custody. 9 months. 9 months. Yeah. That's what Taylor J said. In that instance, there's no fixed standard. So it depends. It depends on the offense. It depends on, because there are certain offenses, investigation is very hard. You have to take the samples, send them to forensic labs abroad. I think there are no forensic labs in Ghana, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know if they set up one. UCC was planning on running a course and things of the sort. So it's on a case-by-case basis. So he can only be kept for a reasonable period of time, pending investigation and prosecution by the police. However, for now, but he can apply again for bail. Let's go to our social media and see what we are getting from our viewers who have been listening to us on this controversial Owusu Bempah matter. Now, I am conflicted in this matter because Owusu Bempah is my friend, and
And I talked to him, so I'm conflicted. I'm hoping that he will be free.